In Between Fantasy Football Podcast, Season 4. Let's go, baby. Yeah. There was a time I had trouble talking about it. Congratulate them, we know they doubted. Somehow we made it up out the pit, back against the wall, never quit. Traversing through each obstacle, show a non-believer what's possible. Let nothing they could do stand in between me and my wildest dreams. Let's go. Nothing that come at us could come in between. Life gave me the worst, yet my side grew so green. We've been down in the dirt, been tossed in the trash, but I never strayed from my path. When we're gone, we ain't looking back.
Maybe we were all way too high. Maybe that's our fault.
It's going to be a crazy time, but it's going to be a fun time.
Life is boring if you don't take some chances and do some things outside the box.
Your destination for both some feel-good lifestyle advice and some fantasy football advice. All right. Welcome in, everyone. It is October 4th. Spooky season is officially among us. And man, did we feel it here in NFL Week 4 as it was a doozy. Tonight on the show, we're going to break down the good, the bad, and the injured of Week 4, tell you how to move forward as Week 5 is rapidly approaching. Joining me tonight on the show, Seth Woolcock, is always my brothers from another mother's, chef, real estate agent, father, husband, analyst Nathan Polvote, and yes, our guy over there, Scott Reinier, sleepless in Seattle once again, also a father and a husband and an analyst. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight? Week 4 in the rear view. Week 5, here we come, baby.
I love that shirt, Scott. I love it. The guy who gave it to you must be...
I love the person that gave it to me.
They must be really cool. So just say that much.
How are we doing, guys? How are the vibes feeling? I'm high energy tonight. Week 4 was a shit fest, but I'm excited to see what comes in Week 5.
I'm good, man. Just like we all thought, Detroit, Seattle, fantasy bonanza, you know. I'm just happy that my hometown Seahawks are kind of fun to watch at least.
Absolutely. Yeah. Scott, you got one of the highest scoring games in NFL history out there on the West Coast. So congratulations to you on that one. Guys, so much happened here this week, and we're going to break it down tonight. We got front and center. We're going to kind of sift through the mess. What is actual that we can take away? What is maybe just a little bit of fluff on the surface? We're going to talk in the scope. Waivers run tonight. We're going to talk about who you need to be picking up, who you need to be cutting as well. And then we're going to talk our free agent finds. We have hit some really gold mines here early in the season, so I'm excited to see if we can continue to hit those. And then we're going to end it with some weekly advice, guys. I feel a bit overwhelmed this week. I'll be honest with you. I think we're 4 weeks into the season. Stuff's starting to go off the handle, whether that's a couple ACLs and injured seasons, whether that's me losing my 3 favorite leagues this week by a combine of 4 points. Devastating, I know. But I feel a little uneasy, and I want to get advice from you guys because I know I'm not the only one feeling a little bit uneasy out there. I know there's other people out there panicking. You might have 0-4 teams, 1-3 teams, but I'm excited to sift through that with you guys as well. Scott,
yep, I'm right in your boat, man. We'll get to it when we give the advice out, but my personal fantasy season has been absolutely brutal this year. I'm no longer winless. I only have one winless team now after this past week.
There you
only
go.
One in 12 leagues, but it's my main longest home league. I'm 0-4.
Oof.
So we'll get to it. We all suffer from it.
I'm 4-0 in our home league for the first time, I think, maybe ever.
There you go.
Sorry,
there you
Scott.
go, Nate. Must be taking your own advice, brother. Must be taking that own advice.
I must be.
Nate took me down this week. We were both 3-0.
Okay. Well,
Round
congratulations to Nate moving forward there. Scott, got to be better here, but we're gonna help people tonight, and I think we're gonna help each other as well because I have some questions that relate to my teams for you guys, and I'm sure it's gonna be vice versa here as well. We got Albert in the chat once again. Good evening, Albert. Good evening to you. We appreciate you joining us. Guys, a reminder to everyone, easiest way to support the show here at In Between Media is give us a like, thumbs up on this video, subscribe here, iTunes, wherever you guys get your podcasts, and it means a lot to us. We just hit 300 subscribers last week. I know we're going to continue to grow at a rapid pace, so I'm very, very excited for that. Guys, let's go ahead and jump in, though, because we have an absolutely loaded show, and it starts here with Front and Center.
Sometimes taking that first step out the door is the hardest thing to do. Give it a chance, you'll be begging for more. Save the spot just for you. We're all somewhere in between. How about you come to the place we can have some fun? Ain't gotta worry about knowing not what it means. Keep come and give me another, cause the night is young. At least I so thought.
This just in. Breaking news. Front and Center.
So week 4 was highlighted by the injuries, guys, and it started on Sunday morning. West Coast managers, I know they're in a little bit of trouble here, guys, because Alvin Kamara, he did not suit up for this one in an early game in London. So 6:30 a.m. on the West Coast, if you weren't locked and loaded and made those switches with Alvin Kamara, you might have been burned. He was started in at least about 30% of leagues, guys. So sad to see that happen. But with him being held out with this injury, it opened the door to Mark Ingram once again to be somewhat fantasy relevant. 13 touches from Mark Ingram, but only 7.3 fantasy points for him on the day. Taysom Hill got into the end zone once again on the ground. And Latavius Murray, old sneaky Latavius, he was activated. He got back in there as well. I mean, this is what it is with Alvin Kamara right now. You can't really trade him. I've seen some trades for him, and I feel like people aren't really getting fair value back for him. So, you know, I'm a hold at this point, and I don't really know what else there is to say about this situation, guys. It sucks.
The only thing you could have done differently is not roster him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you were quicker on the draw than me, I am one of the 30%. I have him in 2 leagues, and I was super busy with other stuff on Saturday night. I checked, and it said, you know, questionable but likely to play. And then I just didn't. I wake up at 6:30 every day with the kids, and I just didn't wake up. All my fault. I know Twitter's been a buzz about that situation. Like, I'm good. Like, the 2 leagues I have him in, I won one of them anyway, and the other one I got blown out. So for me personally, it didn't matter that much. But as far as overall, I mean, yeah, he hasn't really even played yet. I mean, he's missed 2 games now. And even if you were sneaky and thought, okay, I'm going to slide Mark Ingram in, of course, somehow from the depths, Latavius Murray comes in and scores the touchdown. So it's been disappointing, like it has been for many round 1 value running backs this year. He's definitely a hold. I'm just in PPR. I'm just waiting for Kamara to show up, you know?
Absolutely. Guys, I'm seeing a couple of questions in the chat. Let's run through these injuries quick in the next 3 to 4 minutes, and then we will get to any questions you guys have. Feel free to put those down in the chat, whether it's trade, start sits, whatever you guys got for us. We'd love to help you out here live on the show. Javonte Williams, guys, he suffers a torn ACL, LCL, and posterior lateral corner. Sorry, could not pronounce that. Not a medical doctor. But again, just another awful situation. It sucks. Melvin, he got banged up in this one as well. He fumbled, had negative points on the day. So not a good day overall if you're a Denver Broncos running back, unless your name was Mike Boone, who suddenly enters the fold here. And we're going to talk about him a little more in depth here when we get to the waiver wire section later on, guys. But Mike Boone, Melvin Gordon, these guys need to step up. Latavius Murray signed to the roster as well this week. Hops on a plane back from London with the Saints, gets over to the Broncos. Crazy how the whole practice squad situation works there. But looks like he's going to be suiting up in Denver, guys. Just awful to see for Javonte Williams. We've been big fans of him here on the show, and we hope he has a speedy recovery. But I think the rest of the way here, guys, Melvin, he's probably an RB2 as long as he's healthy. And I think we got to take our flyers here on Mike Boone with the waiver wire the way it is.
Well, you do have to take a flyer on Mike Boone. Don't get excited about Latavius Murray, guys. He hasn't been a lead back since 2017. He hasn't really been good since 2013 and anything but a spot role. And I really feel like that's all this is. They brought him in to spot Boone and Gordon.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not excited about Latavius Murray coming in and taking over, but for me, like as far as waivers go, Mike Boone is the dart throw for me as well. But my expectations, I mean, it was already a committee where Javonte wasn't getting the work you would have thought with Hackett calling the shots. And so I don't foresee much, it's going to be messy. It's going to be a committee with one, bringing in one lesser talented back after the most talented back got hurt, and speedy recovery to Javonte Williams. It's just, you never want to see a burgeoning star player go down.
Absolutely.
He got burrowed.
Yeah, so
blew up his knee.
So, but I mean, Mike Boone just finds his way into our world every few years. I remember there was a fantasy championship a few years back where he was the hot ad.
Yep, 24 PPR points that day. I looked it up. Yeah, I looked it up today. 24 PPR points. He won a couple people some leagues that year. It sucks. We hope Javonte will be back. We know it's going to take him a little bit of time coming back from this ACL. Hey, Brad Bolt, good to see you in the chat tonight, buddy. We're doing well. Appreciate you tuning in tonight here on the YouTube. I think the bottom line here is, for me, if I'm have Melvin Gordon, I'm looking to move him immediately. Someone out there is desperate for a running back, whether it's this news, a couple other news items we're going to talk about tonight, but I would be looking to move him because I don't think his value is going to be what people might think it is. While I think he's going to be, a mid-range RB2 rest of the way here, guys, there's still always value to capitalize on the unknown. We did it earlier this season with Darrell Henderson. We talked about flipping him after week 1 when the opportunity was there. So just something to keep in mind there. Let's move forward, though. We have some questions to answer here very soon. But first, Cordarrelle Patterson, he heads to IR after a knee procedure. He exited this game early, played 1 snap in the second half, fellas, and then it was out for him. He at least scored a TD on the day. He is now RB12 on the season. So Patterson, he's played well so far. Nate, your and I's concerns about him holding up were, they were accurate. He played through some of the injury, opted to get that surgery today. And now it leaves a couple rookies here in the backfield, Tyler Algier being the headliner there. Again, we're going to talk about him later in the show. I don't think we can get overly excited. Nate, you kind of talked about that in your column today.
Yeah, the thing is that we saw Caleb Huntley come in, and they had even carries, 10 and 10. Algier was a little bit more efficient with his carries, 80 yards versus 49. But when you look at the situation and Arthur Smith, this is going to be a platoon. That's what they did last week. It's what they're going to continue to do until Cordarrelle Patterson is back. You can't, if you're desperate at running back, okay, pick one. It doesn't matter which one it is really at this point.
And let's keep in mind, too, that Damian Williams has been out the last few weeks, and he could make his way back as early as next week as well. So by week 6, there could be 3 different mouths to feed here. Scott, do you feel any confidence in this Atlanta backfield next couple weeks?
It's to me, it's similar. It's similar to Denver. It's going to be messy. I think I'm probably a little bit higher on Algier. I wrote about him a few different times leading into this season. He just had a really good college profile from a rushing standpoint, not receiving. And he had a few runs last week that he looked pretty explosive. So I don't think either is going to come in and take over as a lead back. I would rather have Algier.
Absolutely.
5th round is not great, but it's better than undrafted.
Yeah.
But I would be worried about Damian Williams too. He's eligible to come back, I believe, after week 5. And so I think it's going to kind of be a mess. But if I'm doing waivers now, I also, because Cordarrelle, it's a nagging knee injury that he had a minor procedure on. So, I think the thought is he'll be back after the 4 games. It's not going to be some prolonged thing. So I would be hesitant to spend a lot of fab or priority on Tyler Algier, but he's who I would want in Atlanta.
Albert here asking a question related to what we're talking about here. Would you guys rather pick up Rachaad White?
Yes.
I would. Yes. I agree with you there, Scott, because I think at the end of the day, he has standalone value with Leonard Fournette still there. He got in the end zone. He had 5 receptions, 5 targets this week, capitalized on them. Really nice day for him. And I think if something were to unfortunately happen to Lenny, he steps into an RB1 role. So absolutely, I would rather pick up Rachaad White. Albert, great question though.
Yep.
Final one here, guys. Jonathan Taylor, he twists his ankle. He said he is optimistic and wants to play. He plans to play on Thursday, but he also said in the same quote, if you can't go, you can't go. Initially, this was reported as a high ankle sprain, which really caused some concern there. We've seen players come back from high ankle sprains the last couple of seasons, and they're not the same player for the rest of the season. However, we don't know if that's the case. We're not really getting a lot of information out of the Colts right now. I scoured the internet today. I scoured all the beat reporter pages I could. Didn't really find a whole lot. Didn't find a whole lot except a couple quotes from him, a couple like very vague quotes from Frank Wright as well. Bottom line here, I think, though, with Jonathan Taylor, guys, if he's out, you can start Nyheim Hines. If not, you got to hold him. Hope he comes back and smashes because he's been wildly inefficient. Over 20 carries here in week 4. Only got a little over 40 yards in him. So just dreadful if you've been a JT fan, man, a JT manager, Scott.
Yeah, I saw from Adam Schefter and I think a few other places, he did have x-rays and they did come back negative.
Right.
Whatever that means for a high or not high ankle sprain. I don't know enough to know if that means, okay, it's officially not a high ankle sprain. But I think the fact that it came back negative means it's probably not some, long-lasting injury that's going to keep him out for more than a game. Again, like you said, though, it hasn't been pretty when he's been healthy. So, I mean, obviously keep an eye on that because they play on Thursday.
Yep.
But I'm not as quick to just throw Nyheim Hines in. Hines to me is he's the type of player that he's not going to just all of a sudden be their bell cow. He is their pass catching back. Deion Jackson potentially will be there, take over that role. It'll be much more of a split thing than it was with Jonathan Taylor. But I don't think Hines is some smash. And then I heard Nate's boy, Philip Lindsay, could be elevated from the practice squad as well.
Yes.
And he's got a lot more experience, as like a one-game fill-in for the Colts, who are trying to keep their season alive, basically.
I want to see Philip Lindsay. The dude ran for 1,000 yards 2 seasons in a row after being undrafted. Sorry.
Hey,
don't say Philip Lindsay. It makes me mad. I would love to see Lindsay get an opportunity in Indy and maybe prove something and land with a team that needs a running back. Broncos. I think that would be awesome.
I would too, but I mean, under the logic of he hasn't been a bell cow in a while, like Latavius Murray, it applies with Lindsay as well.
Oh, but Lindsay's like 7 or 8 years younger than Latavius Murray, man.
No, I love Lindsay. I love Phil Lindsay. I've loved him ever since he came in and surprised everyone that first year.
I agree. It was a story that didn't last long enough, guys. So we're going to hope Jonathan Taylor comes back. I put out a tweet earlier today, just kind of like re-ranking the first round of fantasy drafts here. And some guy commented asking like, wow, you really still had Taylor in that first round. I think I maybe had him down at 8 or 9 or 10, like somewhere in that back half. Nate, would you if we were redrafting in August, knowing what we know today, that JT is going to have a couple slower games out of the gate, might be a little banged up, would you still draft Jonathan Taylor in the first round looking back, you think?
So I'm going to say no, but I'm not going to say no because I don't think Jonathan Taylor is talented. I'm going to say no because I'm not sure Frank Reich knows what he's doing as a head coach, and I think this team is kind of a mess, and Matt Ryan should have retired like 5 years ago after he won MVP, gone out on top. This team is just a mess, and knowing that, still a hold in Dynasty, but for redraft this season, I probably wouldn't have taken him at cost.
What about you, Scott?
Well, no, I wouldn't have taken him in the top 3, but I would still, I mean, it's still a pretty small sample size. I agree that the trend is not positive with, they've been a team whose offensive line has pushed people around, and that's just not happening this year. Game 1, he smashed. Game 1, a lot of people smashed that have come back to earth. But I'm still taking him in the first round. There's a handful of receivers that I'm now taking probably over most running backs.
Certainly. Yep.
Certainly. But as far as once I get to the running backs, I mean, there's not a ton of running backs I'm putting ahead of him, even with this slow start.
Yeah, it was unfortunate, guys. Hopefully Jonathan Taylor can bounce back here. We'll see what happens here this week. Want to get to a couple questions here that we have in the chat, guys. Want to start here with Caden, the Colts fan. What's up, Caden? Hope you're having a great Tuesday evening with us. Thanks for tuning in. Was offered Lamb and Henry for J. Jeff. Nope, not for me. I'm not giving up Justin Jefferson without getting a top 4 or 5 asset in return. Sorry, can't do it. Scott, are you in on this at all?
Yeah, no, I'm out on this as well. Unless that's two. I mean, CeeDee Lamb has started to prove himself.
He's turned it around,
games, which with Cooper Rush at quarterback. So I mean, if you asked me this question a couple of weeks ago, it would have been even more of 100%. Absolutely not. But I would at least consider, just because you're getting a top level running back and, in my opinion, a top level receiver back, neither on the tier that Jefferson's on. But if you're talking redraft, especially if you're 0-4 or something like that, and you need a spark, you need an infusion at two positions instead of just one.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like fair. That's fair.
It's based on context.
Yeah, if you're desperate and you don't have a super team, a team with a lot of super depth, like I would consider it. My thing is I would want like a better receiver back than CeeDee Lamb. Like CeeDee Lamb's still solid. Like he's a wide receiver too, but I just need a better wide receiver. Like if I can get an AJ Brown or someone with a little more Javonte, someone with a little more upside, then I would consider it. But we appreciate the question anyway, Caden. Here's one from Chris Udovich. This is actually referring to our home league here. A little bit of context that I can provide around this. Udo here, he is, I think, a 2-2 team, one of the better teams in the league. He does have Saquon on this team already. He has Jamar Chase, and he would be giving up Waddle and George Pickens for Eckler. This was kind of thrown around in my group chat that this trade was super unfair. Do you guys think this is a fair trade? And what side would you rather have, Nate?
Probably Eckler, because we know what we're getting in Austin Eckler. Ask me after next week, I might say Waddle and Pickens, because I think George Pickens is going to be an absolute beast with Kenny Pickett, but I need to see it first. I need to see it first. I know what I get in Eckler.
Scott?
I would lean Eckler here. I basically agree with Nate. I'm a big Waddle guy, but we'll see what that situation. I mean, the situation in Miami is questionable at this point. With
not great.
We don't know how long Tua is going to be out. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater is a serviceable backup as far as backup quarterbacks go.
Right.
But I think in this case, especially if it's full PPR, the Chargers target their running backs more than pretty much anybody in the league, and that benefits Eckler on a weekly basis. So I'm probably going Eckler here.
Okay. And I definitely understand why you guys are saying Eckler. My one argument, I think, for Waddle and Pickens would be I think there is more upside there potentially. I think Waddle, if Tua comes back being the same quarterback that he was when he exited that game, Waddle to me goes back to being a top, 15 fringe wide receiver 1 status. Pickens could be a wide receiver 2 with Kenny Pickett in there now. So I'm at least interested in that. And the Eckler manager here, he has no wide receivers. So I understand trying to get it. But I think it's a good trade overall here. If that ends up getting done there. Here we have one from our guy, Lucius. What's up, Lucius? Evening, guys. Great show as usual. Hey, we appreciate that, man. I was wondering what your thoughts were on Kamara. Have an owner trying to get me to buy, and I'm unsure of his value. 0.5 PPR league, half-point PPR league there for Lucius. Interesting. Very interesting trade or interesting proposition here. I don't know if I'm going out and trying to buy Alvin Kamara right now, guys. It's a little bit of a sketchy situation. We've seen Taysom Hill get a lot of run as well. So I'm kind of lenient on trying to go out and acquire Kamara. Scott, are you trying to acquire Kamara right now?
Probably not with a lot of effort, but I would consider, if I was listing, after 4 games,
certainly
buy low candidates.
Certainly.
I mean, depending on the price, if somebody's just panicking about Alvin Kamara,
right,
then I would certainly take a stab and buy low, but I'm not giving up anything near cost for him.
No. I'm with Scott. Unless you need a running back and you're staring down, well, do I go after Mike Boone? Do I go after Tyler Algier? Do I go after Caleb Huntley? See what you can get done for Kamara before you do that. But if you don't need a running back, don't do it just to roster the guy, because he's not that smash start that he used to be.
And I think that's a big trend here, Nate. And you kind of pointed that out. We're kind of seeing it with Alvin Kamara, with Zeke, with Derrick Henry a little bit. Some of these running backs, Dalvin Cook even, they might not be the absolute stars they once were. They're aging a little bit. We're kind of seeing the younger running backs take over. The wide receivers are really the stars of the league at this point right now. So unless you need a running back, sure, I'd kick the tires on Alvin Kamara, because when he's out there, he's going to get 20+ touches. But I'm not actively trying to get him. But if I need a running back, I will kick the tires on it, but I'm not, overly pursuing him.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know the rest of the story behind this question, but typically when somebody else is trying to get you to buy one of their players, you're not in one of those situations where you're buying low. You know what I mean?
Certainly.
So this would, I mean, obviously this would all depend on what the offer was.
Okay. Here we have one more question here from Chris Cummings. This was another one from my home league earlier today that actually got pushed through, and I was surprised this trade happened because it's a very sharp league, and it was Chris Olave for Michael Pittman. Pittman has struggled here as of late. It hasn't really looked super pretty for Matt Ryan as a whole. He's passing for a lot of yards, but not super efficiently. Olave, we know the story for this kid. He leads the league in air yards. He's been incredible for a rookie. However, his quarterback situation is a little bit up in the air right now, guys. What side would you rather have here, Olave or Pittman? Crazy that we're talking about this just a couple weeks in.
I can't believe that this is already a question and that I don't know the answer right away. This one's tough because like recency bias creeps in. It's like Olave's been killing it. Pittman has not. Pittman's another one of those guys. Week 1, it was like, oh yeah, we got a wide receiver 1 here, fellas. And then it's been, he was out for a game, and then just the Colts offense and Matt Ryan have looked pitiful. Jonathan Taylor might be hurt. There's not going to be a lot of stack in the box if Jonathan Taylor's out. So, I might have to think about this one for a second. Nate, why don't you go?
So this is really easy for me because ahead of the season, as much as I love Michael Pittman, you know how much I love Michael Pittman. I was touting him in 2020 hard, didn't fully pay off. However, if you had told me that Olave was going to have that basically wide receiver 1, like key wide receiver role in this New Orleans offense, I would have said Olave over Pittman before the season started.
But
Olave's
does he have that role? Does he have that role, though?
Yeah, he does. Look, Michael Thomas isn't reliable. Jarvis Landry isn't reliable. When Michael Thomas is on the field, he's the wide receiver 1. How often is he going to be on the field, guys?
We don't know.
That's what I really wonder, and that's the problem.
Both those guys are dinged up too. I mean, not like missing games, but they're battling with injuries.
Right, and then you look at Pittman's situation. You've got a bad offensive line, a head coach that may or may not be suited to be a head coach in the NFL, and a 38-year-old quarterback that certainly didn't take care of himself the way guys like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers have.
Easy on old Matty Ice over there, bud.
Look, I love Matty Ice, and I was hot on him coming into the season. I thought this was a great situation with Reich. I was wrong. Things could turn around, but I don't see it happening. Everything is a mess there. And as much as I love Michael Pittman, if we're not talking dynasty, it's Olave over Pittman right now. And I don't think it's that hard of a call.
Maybe it is Olave over Pittman, even in redraft, but the issue is, like, I think you can get more than just Olave. I think you can get a package deal for Pittman. He still has that name value. He's still a 3rd-round pick in most drafts. So I think there's still some name value there that, I would absolutely take. If I have Chris Olave, as much as I love him, and someone offering Michael Pittman straight up, I would definitely do it. Like, if I had Pittman, I would want more than just Chris Olave. I would take Chris Olave and, like, a running back or another receiver, but it's tough for me to, like, I get it that it's a mess, Nate, and you're completely right. It is not panned out in Indy like we thought it was going to, but I still have belief. I still have belief that they'll get it somewhat together and that Pittman's still going to be a high-end wide receiver 2 at the very least.
What if JT has a lingering ankle issue, though? Sorry, Scott.
Then they're airing it out. I think even more probably.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I'm very tempted to say Olave here just because he's been better. He would be better for my fantasy team right now. So then it brings in what Nate was talking about. You're kind of projecting, okay, well, what's rest of season look like? To me, Olave could easily outscore Pittman the rest of this season. But to me, like the approach I would take, whether it ended up being right or wrong, the process, I guess, is I feel like it's a little bit of a panic sell of Pittman. Not anything against Olave. I feel like it's been 4 weeks. Yes. We all thought we knew exactly what was going on. We think after every week, we think we know exactly the way everything's going to go. And I mean, Pittman's too talented and he's the alpha on that team. So I side with Seth here in that if I was on the Pittman side of this, I would want more than just Olave. And if I couldn't get more than just Olave, then I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest takeaway from this, yes, I do love Olave too. My biggest takeaway from seeing this trade and seeing that this was a trade that went through in one of my leagues was go out and try to buy Michael Pittman low. He is a great buy low right now. While it might not look sexy in Indianapolis, Frank Reich needs to get his shit together. I completely agree with you guys on that. but it's still Michael Pittman. He's still a dog out there. Let's move forward, though, guys, because we do have a whole slew of things to break down before we jump into the waiver wire here. And we're going to call this is like a subsection of front and center here, and this is big weeks and shit weeks, because that's really what week 4 was to me. We had some players with big weeks, and we had some players with shit weeks. So let's talk about the quarterbacks, guys, that had big weeks. Geno and Jared Goff lead us here. QB1, QB2 on the week. Congratulations to them. They both dropped 30 burgers. Goff proved that he can do it without Amon-Ra St. Brown, without DJ Chark. So hats off to him. His upcoming schedule, the New England Patriots, Dallas, and Miami. So no defenses that really scare you, but none that are super inviting. And then Geno Smith, New Orleans, Arizona, Chargers. Only one of those defenses I really want to attack in there. So not a great schedule, I don't think, for either one, but not like crazy difficult as well. Are we buying into this sustainability for either one of these players? Scott, go ahead.
I'm definitely buying in with Jared Goff personally. I tweeted something out that somehow got a lot of traction. It was just a random thought, but you know how Twitter works, where, I started the season in my main home league with Trey Lance as my starter. And then he got hurt in game, which is always a killer when you have a player get hurt in the game, not like you have to replace them, but they get hurt and give you 2 points. So I got excited and replaced him with Tua Tagovailoa, who then got hurt in game. So I'm pivoting to Jared Goff, and I think I'm likely just going to put him in my quarterback slot and not think about it anymore. Now, he's Jared Goff, so it's not like he's going to maintain this. Both the Seahawks and the Detroit pass defenses are atrocious, which is what led to 93 total points. And by the way, the first time in franchise history that the Seahawks did not punt during a game. The Dallas matchup scares me. Dallas has got a pretty vicious defense, but New England is the people that are still kind of scared of the New England defense are kind of riding that historical reputation. They haven't been that great. They're bottom half against receivers. Miami's an up and coming defense though. So, I mean, Goff's next 3 games aren't ideal for me. With Geno Smith, the Seahawks were basically the same as they were last year, the first couple games. Very low play count, time of possession. The last 2 games, granted, against the Falcons and the Lions, they've been having to play in shootouts. And I don't necessarily see that changing. And Geno Smith has proven at this point to me, he is an efficient quarterback who goes through his reads and throws to people. He's not doing anything crazy. He's not trying to throw a 50-yard bomb every play. He's taking what's given to him, which honestly is refreshing as a Seahawks fan to see that as the style. So I think if you're stuck, I think both have staying power. I do.
Okay. That's very interesting to hear, Scott. Nate, what's your kind of opinion on these 2 quarterbacks? Obviously, they both have 2 bad defenses out there. So I think the volume is going to be consistent, at least for Jared Goff moving forward, Nate.
Well, I think Goff has always been a decent quarterback, but he's like the definition of a system quarterback. He needs a certain system. What Dan Campbell is running in Detroit is working for him. And he has weapons. Not that he didn't have weapons in LA, but he's got weapons in a system that he likes. Plus, having DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams for him, that's a better running back core than he had once Todd Gurley was down in LA. I think that's helped him a lot too. I think it's wholly sustainable in Detroit. Seattle, I also think is sustainable. We're seeing Geno Smith and why he was drafted, where he was drafted. He's gotten more mature. He's playing more like he played at West Virginia when he was a star at West Virginia in college. I think that he could be one of those guys where it's like, okay, he sat for a long time, but now we're going to see Renaissance Geno. And this is going to be a surprisingly good Seahawks team with Geno Smith to where maybe they don't need to go out and draft a quarterback next year or the year after. Maybe we're 3 or 4 years down the road from them looking for another option. 77.3 completion percentage through 4 games.
Insane.
I know it's only 4 games, but dude, even at a 4-game clip, that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I think you guys nailed it. I don't need to add too much more than I think there is staying power, at least with Goff, 100%. I think he could be a low end QB1 with what we're seeing. He was QB6 a couple of years ago, so we can't forget that. Like, the guy has potential. He's been involved with two of the highest scoring games in NFL history now, so something to keep in mind there for sure. And Gino, I think you guys covered it there. I will say I love Gino. I have him in a lot of leagues too. A lot of my super flex leagues, I went after him as my QB3. He looked good last year. He's looked good this year. Question here from Alex, a new face in the chat. What's up, Alex? Hope you're having a good evening, my man. Should I trade Jeff Wilson and Elijah Mitchell for Mike Williams and Mostert? Full point PPR. He says, I have no wide receiver 2, and I already have Kamara, Mixon, and Brees already. Yes, I am smashing this 100%. For me, if you need a wide receiver 2, Mike Williams, you're going to take your lumps with him. He's going to have down weeks, but he's going to have big ones too. And if you already have Kamara, Mixon, and Brees, I'd say you're set at running back. You need to capitalize on Jeff Wilson while you can, I think.
Dude, I don't even need Raheem Mostert to be a part of this trade to take it. Like, that's just like an extra, like, oh, I have a bonus running back. I might start 1 week.
Yeah, I would do this. I mean, ultimately, a few weeks from now, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how Elijah Mitchell comes back from his injury.
Yeah.
But it's trading, one running back. It's trading 2 running backs, but you're trading basically one starting spot for Mike Williams and Raheem Mostert. So especially if I need a receiver and I have those running backs, smash it
up. And I think like the bottom line here is, guys, is like in a couple of weeks when Elijah Mitchell comes back, you're not really going to feel comfortable starting any San Francisco running back. So you might as well capitalize on Jeff Wilson Jr. while you can.
Man, he had the juice on that touchdown run last night.
Yes, he did. He did.
So
quick like a bunny, man. That was fun to watch.
I just needed one more point from George Kittle though to win a couple of leagues. So I got an issue with George Kittle this week. He hurt me.
Story of your life.
Yeah. How about it? How about it, Nate? Guys, let's go ahead and move forward in quarterbacks here. Russ and Brady, they bounce back for the QB3 and the QB4 on the week. Russ, he injures his throwing shoulder in this. He's battling with a sore arm. He's going to play Thursday night is what we're hearing. He has the Chargers and the Jets coming up after that. So, okay, matchups for Russ coming up. Brady, sad to hear the divorce news today. And I'm just going to go on and say this. If you're one of the people on Twitter making fun of Tom Brady and his divorce, I'm gonna at least probably hit the mute button. I don't know. I get that we're trying to be funny and come up with memes, and that's part of this whole content creation scheme. But at the end of the day, this is a person, this is a family, these are human beings, and Tom Brady has given us a lot in his life as football fans. So I think we could at least show him a little bit of respect. Just wanted to throw that out there. There will be no divorce jokes here at IBT as long as Tom Brady is part of the NFL. Thank you.
No, I agree.
Right.
We got plenty of Russell Wilson TikToks to make fun of.
Yeah, right.
Has anyone had the danger sandwich yet?
God, no. When I was forced to eat Subway on Saturday,
all I can say is tune in to the next Pulp Fantasy.
Okay.
Oh,
Interesting.
Scott.
Interesting.
But, dude, look at the dedication. He's gonna eat Subway.
Oh man, I love
media.
I love every second of the entertainment of Russell Wilson. I love every.
I know you do.
Believe me.
I know you
Before
do.
he left and after he left, it's not a he switched teams thing. I've always it's just pure entertainment with that guy.
Guys, quick question here from Mark Yosko, new face in the chat. What's up, Mark? Hope you're enjoying your evening. Appreciate you tuning in tonight. I have 3 Eagles pass catchers: Goddard, AJ Brown, and Devonta Smith. I just traded for DJ Moore for Devonta Smith without realizing my situation. Still a good trade, in my opinion. What should I do?
Start them.
Okay, so it looks like he has the issue that he traded DJ Moore away for Devonta Smith, not realizing he was going to get all 3 Eagles pass catchers.
Yeah.
I think
start them every week.
I think you need to be a little bit
starting Goddard and AJ Brown every week. Devonta Smith, I mean, depending on your league size and what your roster looks like, he's not just an auto start no matter what. He's not quite at that level. But I don't necessarily have any problem needing to remedy something here just because I have too many eggs in one basket. It's a good basket to have eggs in.
Agreed.
Yeah.
They're the only 4-0 team left. Jalen Hurts is top 5 in the league in passing right now. Who would have seen that coming? I think a couple of us did here. But, I mean, at the end of the day, Devonta Smith is a better player at this point in the fantasy season than DJ Moore. I think he holds more value. I think I'd rather have him rest the season, no doubt. So I'm not, I'm not too concerned here, Mark. He's saying that trade was good. No, I felt like I had to move off DJ Moore. Yeah, you did have to move off DJ
I
Moore.
think that's a fine.
Everyone
that's
move
a
off
fine
of
trade
DJ
for
Moore.
There's probably going to be people out there that think that wasn't enough for DJ Moore, but it's in the realm, and that's specifically unless Matt Corral comes in or something.
My advice here for Mark, kind of closing this out. Sorry there, Scott. My advice to Mark would be if Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert have a big game in the next couple weeks and you want to move them, feel free to, but don't sell them on the cheap just because you do have 3 Eagles. This is a good team to be a part of, I think is what we're all saying. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Mark, we appreciate the question, man. We hope you continue to tune in to us over here at IBT. Subscribe, follow the show. We appreciate you. Let's talk about wide receivers here, guys, before we jump into some waiver action. Justin Jefferson, Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, they lead the wide receiver core here in week 4. No surprise there. Top 8 performer on the week, Josh Reynolds. Got to take my hat off to Nate. Nate, we have a section every week on the show in the scope where we highlight deep waiver wire targets. Nate, a couple weeks ago, highlighted Josh Reynolds. Congratulations to you, Nate. Josh Reynolds lost me a couple leagues, but I was happy to see that at least it put a smile on your face.
Well, and I want to add in there that when Nate made that call, Reynolds was coming off like a 3-catch game, so it wasn't cherry picking stats by any stretch of the imagination. Good call.
Yep, good call, my friend.
There's a Tom Petty line. Even the losers get lucky sometimes. So, I'm going to hit occasionally, right?
There we go. There we go. Some of the shit wide receivers on the week, guys. Drake London, Terry McLaurin, Deontay Johnson. Are we concerned about any of them moving forward? For Deontay Johnson, I think he needs to get his feet under him with Kenny Pickett. We'll see what kind of that brings. I think overall it could help Deontay Johnson find the end zone a little more. He stepped out of the back of the end zone too, where I needed him in a couple of leagues just to get me over the hump there.
I have a lot of Deontay Johnson.
Between him and George Kittle stepping out of the back of the end zone this weekend, I was not a happy camper. But my takeaway with these wide receiver shitters here in week 4, guys, is Terry McLaurin. I am concerned. He was 2 of 6 for 15. He has a low ceiling and a low floor. We've seen that this season. I haven't really been in on him all season, so I don't have him anywhere. But at this point in the season, I'd rather have Curtis Samuel 100%. And it looks like Jahan Dotson, the talented rookie out of Penn State, he's going to be out a couple weeks. But when he returns, I think I'd rather have him as well.
Yeah, I wasn't really sold on Terry to begin with. I mean, I think I made that pretty clear. I'm not worried about Deontay, especially as we referenced, we have Kenny Pickett coming back, which is exciting. And Drake London's going to be fine, dude. He's basically Jamar Chase Jr. The guy's so talented.
Yeah.
So for
I absolutely
me,
agree.
Drake London, the only concern I would have with Drake London is not have anything to do with Drake London. It's Marcus Mariota. It's the fact that they were basically it was funny that they were 85% run almost or something like that in this past game, whereas the Buccaneers were 90% pass. But I'm not worried long-term about Drake London. He's the man. Kyle Pitts is not doing anything yet. So, I mean, Drake London is the top target there. Deontay Johnson, I mean, I'm a little worried. Like, I know that we all want Kenny Pickett to come in and take over for Trubs, but Pickett played like half the game and still threw 3 interceptions. So I think
those were not his fault. 2 of those were not his fault. The one was on a Hail Mary. So I could argue all 3 of those were not his fault.
None of them were his fault. I'm with you, Seth.
Fair enough. But
Scott.
I just say, I still think it's going to take a little bit of time. So if there's a few more struggles out of Deontay Johnson as Kenny Pickett gets his feet under him, I wouldn't be surprised. But
and these matchups, Scott, you're right. The matchups, yes.
I'm excited that there is a new quarterback, hopefully, in Pittsburgh. With McLaurin, honestly, the game before that, 9 targets, 100 yards against the Eagles. So, he ran into a little bit, the whole team ran into a buzzsaw in Dallas. Like I said, Dallas is not, their defense is no joke. So I don't necessarily feel much different than I did, early in the season about McLaurin. I still think he's going to get volume. Would I rather have Curtis Samuel or Dotson over him? Probably.
Okay. All right. One more question here from Mark. Then he says he has to head out. Hey, Mark, wish you'd stay, but we understand, man. It's getting late over here on the East Coast. Travis Etienne or Tyler Algier, and I think this one's pretty easy for me. Like, if I don't need a running back play these next 2 weeks, I'm still holding on to Etienne. It hasn't been good. It's been awful. I really only think you're going to find some value maybe the next couple weeks. Cordarrelle Patterson is going to be out at least 4 weeks, maybe longer. We're not exactly sure. But we've kind of talked about this backfield a little bit earlier on the show. It's going to be somewhat of a mess. So just keep that in mind. Like, if you need a running back play this week, sure, take Algier. But I still think Etienne has upside this season. It might take some time to unlock it, though, guys.
Yeah, I'm with everything you said.
I agree.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move forward here. Talk about running backs here quickly. Austin Eckler leads the day, 34.9 PPR points for him. Josh Jacobs, 34.5 points for him. And Miles Sanders almost gets that 30 burger for himself as well. Pierce, Jamal Williams, they both had 2 TD games. Keep up their hot streaks. Told you, Bo. But Bo, our guy Bo over on the DFS show, he was fighting me. I wanted to play Jamal Williams everywhere, and he didn't want to pay up for him. And I was adamant on it. But they bounced back. Penny bounced back for Rashad Penny. And I think the biggest thing I learned about Rashad Penny's big performance against the Lions is not like, oh, my God, I need to go out and buy Rashad Penny. It's that I need to buy whoever's playing this Lions defense, guys, because they are stinky. They are stinky. Jeff Okuda's looked okay at times, but they are just overall a very poor defense still.
Well, they're giving up a ton of points. So, yeah, it's kind of like Tennessee's defense. Like, play whoever's playing against Tennessee unless it's Indy. I love Eckler. I love Jacobs this weekend. I'm loving the continued use of Miles Sanders. Finally, we're seeing him be the back he could be. I think Jamal Williams is going to snipe a lot of high value, like third down goal line work from DeAndre Swift. I think he's the guy that you want to keep watching and see what happens.
Okay.
Well, in Swift, they might hold him out till the bye. So, I mean, Williams, I think, has staying power like a few other running backs we've talked about, even with Swift back, like you were just saying, Nate. But I think he's one of those running backs where it's like if you were able to get him early, one of those backs where if the starter in front of him goes out, it's like slot machine, ding, 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 ding. Whereas with these other running back groups we've been talking about in Atlanta and Denver, it's not like that. Right. So hats off to the people that have Jamal Williams. It's going to probably be pretty fun for a little while.
It will be. Yeah, ride that high, guys. We got a new face in the chat tonight, guys. Simp Eli. What's up, Simp Eli? I need some help with a trade. Should I do CeeDee Lamb and Breece Hall for Fournette, McLaurin, and Khalil Herbert? I can't do this as a Breece Hall person that has held on to him. I think we're only seeing the precipice of what Breece Hall can be. He's now getting the lion's share of the work. I think he's going to see big games coming up in the future. I love Leonard Fournette, but I don't love him enough because I don't want McLaurin, and Khalil Herbert's fine, but he's just a fine depth piece in my opinion at this point. I can't do – it's basically a 2-for-1 in my opinion for Fournette because I don't want to play McLaurin and I barely want to play Khalil Herbert.
I mean, in a vacuum, there's no way I'm making this trade. But if you're super needy at running back, like all you've got is Breece Hall, and you can get Fournette and Herbert for him, and then you can basically swap CD and Terry McLaurin, I'm okay with that. It just depends on your roster situation.
Scott?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Seth. I'm not doing this. I could see that. We talked about that type of context with an earlier question. If you're filling a couple of different holes on a team that's lacking, then potentially, and to you owners out there, if you see somebody that is lacking and you want to make a trade like this where you get CD and Breece back, look for this type of thing.
Yes,
because we're entering that time of the season with buys coming up too, where the side A, side B of a trade in a trade calculator, it's a little bit of a thing of the past. We're talking, we're bringing context into it. We're bringing schedules into it. So look for this type of thing. But I'm CD and Brees. I'm a little slightly worried about Fournette. McLaurin, same deal. We just talked about him and Herbert. I like Herbert. I think he would be great as the lead back of that team over a prolonged period. But I think, Monty's going to come back at some point. And it's going to be somewhat messy.
Yep. I'm with you guys on that one. Good stuff. We appreciate the questions here, Eli. We hope you tune around, hang around for the rest of the show. Subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you here. Shit running backs for the week here in week 4, guys. The floor fell off.
That's what we're calling it. I love that that's the title.
Hey, shit RVs, shit man. I'm not hiding any feelings how I feel about it here in week 4. We're being blunt as all hell. So hope no little kids are listening tonight. But the floor fell out on James Robinson, guys. 2.9 PPR points for him. Upcoming schedule, though, looks pretty tasty. Houston, Indy, New York Giants. He was 8 for 29. So it was just kind of bad game flow, in my opinion. They did get up early, and then they just kind of went away from him, tried to throw it a little more than I think they should have. 9 touches for Travis Etienne in this one as well. So I'm not concerned with James Robinson. I think we got to continue to hold him. We kind of talked on Travis Etienne, guys. I don't think there's much more to talk about there.
Yeah, no, I think we've kicked the horse to death.
Yeah, I mean, Etienne did for
as the
time.
old saying goes.
He tied James Robinson with carries for the first time this year. So there's a twinge of concern for me for Robinson owners. If this does if it veers more towards a split thing, not saying it's going to, but I would, you're always looking for that sell high, sell buy low thing. So I'm hoping a window wasn't missed on James Robinson. I don't think so, but
I agree because we just talked about it last week and we said to hold him when we were saying to sell high on a lot of other RBs. Yeah. Hopefully that is not the case, but we shall see here.
It's just one game. It's just one game.
Yep.
Just chill.
Quickly talking about tight ends, TJ Hawkinson, he goes off for 39.9 PPR points. Just when you think Hawkinson can't bounce back, he goes hard. And I think that go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say, I was using Hawk against you, arguing about Kyle Pitts last week. Like, and then he goes off for 40 points. Just like, I can't win. I can't win with tight ends, man. I just can't.
I know it's been brutal out there. And that's what we're going to talk about here is like Zach Ertz proved he's the real deal. He's now tight end 4. He's had at least 45 yards or a TD in each game of the season. So you have Zach Ertz, who's the real deal. Hawkinson, who can kind of be the real deal sometimes. You have Mark Andrews. You have Travis Kelce. And I guess you have Tyler Conklin. And like outside of those guys, Tyler Higbee, Gerald Everett, like all these other running backs have been busts. Kyle Pitts this week. 1 for 25 in week 4 on 4 targets. Darren Waller, another atrocious week for him. 3 of 5 for 24 yards. No Hunter Renfrow in this. He was supposed to smash. Yeah. Kittle, 2 for 24 on 4 freaking targets. What the hell is going on here?
Yeah. Like, I will say, I'm not quite ready to throw Conklin in with that group that you just mentioned.
I mean, if I would have started Tyler Conklin over George Kittle in the leagues I had him, like
I'd rather play Njoku or Gerald Everett over Tyler Conklin, but that's just me. You're right though. The Kyle Pitts. I mean, like I said it last pod. I still believe in the talent. I think he's going to be good. There's nothing to say right now. It's been awful. It's part of the reason I'm off to a brutal start because I took a lot of Kyle Pitts really high. I'm still going to stand by that. Arthur Smith doesn't really know what he's doing either. Hell, maybe we'll see Kyle Pitts out of the backfield with Cordarrelle Patterson out. You know what I mean? Who knows?
He actually was lined up in the backfield. I don't know if you guys saw that, but I did. Lined up in the backfield.
But it's been brutal. It's been brutal. Normally it's brutal with tight ends, but normally it's not this brutal with this many guys that were in that upper echelon. This
is the worst year. I've always been pretty good at finding value at tight ends. I have a lot of Waller, a lot of Kittle. I have some Dalton Schultz, who he went for a donut here in week 4. 3 targets. He's seen 90% of the snaps, but just can't capitalize on it. Maybe Cooper Rush will get him a little more involved, but very, very disappointing to see that. Mark Andrews, disappointing, but he'll bounce back. Like, basically, if you drafted any tight end out of the side of the top 2, Freiermuth, Ertz, and Hawkinson, like you're effed. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. Like
no, you are. You 100% are. Like, do you want to know what it's like being a Kyle Pitts owner in multiple leagues?
No, I don't.
Take a chopstick and just jam it into your eye as far as you can go. That's what it feels like.
Yeah. It's been
I just because he was one call I got right so far. Let's not throw Gerald Everett out of this either. He's been a very solid tight end all season long.
He really has been.
And he was going late.
I agree. Albert here in the chat, do you guys think Higbee keeps this up? I mean, right now he's the number 2 target in Los Angeles, and unless Odell Beckham Jr. comes back to this team later in the season, he was spotted, hanging out with the Rams a couple weeks ago. He was visiting the Giants this week. I don't know if he was just visiting a friend or what that situation was, but I mean, right now, Tyler Higbee's another person. Like, I don't know, dude. Like, I'm almost feel like at this point, I'd rather have Tyler Higbee than George Kittle. Like, I get that Trent Williams is out. They need Kittle's help with protection. But I mean, Disley's getting targets. The third tight ends, Kyle Juszczyk's making huge plays. Like, it's just frustrating, man. This is like such a frustrating year for tight ends. And like, I just didn't know the tight end dead zone went from round 3 to 8 this year,
Well, and it's somewhat random tight ends like Everett and Higbee who are, making their way out of that. I mean, Higbee, I think it's the real deal. I mean, the Rams, let's be clear here. The Rams have one of the worst running back rooms in the entire league right now, which is why you saw them
in line.
That's why you saw Stafford throw 50 combined passes to Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee. So I don't see any reason why that's going to slow down. So, I mean, if you got Higbee,
right,
more power to you in PPR.
I agree. Love the question, Albert. Guys, we do have some waivers to talk about, free agent fines as well. So let's jump into that in our In the Scope segment. Let's hit it.
Requesting permission to engage.
In the Scope.
Just want to say, everyone, we appreciate you guys hanging out with us here today. Albert, Brad, all the IBT family, a lot of new faces in the chat today too. Really awesome to see as we continue to grow this brand here at IBT. Guys, just a reminder, we do have content coming out 7 days a week between our YouTube channel here and over on our website, inbetweenmedia.com. So just want to thank everyone for tuning in one more time. And let's talk about the main waiver ads here. I'm just going to go through them. We talked about a lot of them today, but just a reminder, Geno Smith only rostered in 15% of ESPN leagues. He's QB9 on the season. Jared Goff rostered in 44% of ESPN leagues. He's QB5. So if you need a quarterback, I don't mind going out and paying up for either one of those. Mike Boone, Latavius Murray. It's going to take your shot on one of these guys. I'm going Mike Boone because we've seen it before on this team. He got good run last week with Melvin banged up, with Javonte gone. Latavius is going to be in the mix too, but if I'm spending up on any of them, it's Mike Boone. But let me be clear, whether it's these guys or the Falcons guys, I'm not spending a ton of fab. I am spending some because I don't know how many more running backs are going to be on the waivers this year, but I'm not breaking the bank for any of these guys. Nate, you kind of touched on that in a column earlier today too.
Well, I think it's interesting because I said, don't pay up for this guy, especially with the Latavius Murray news today. People are going to be rattled by that. Then I go out on the crazy streets of Twitter and I see Michael Florio Jr. saying, hey, break the bank to get Mike Boone this week. And I couldn't disagree more. Dude, there's a reason he's 0.2% rostered in ESPN leagues, okay?
Mike Boone, though.
It's because it's Mike Boone. And here's what's go get him. But, dude, unless you desperately need a running back, do not break the bank to get this guy. He's never been a feature back anywhere.
Week 17, 2019, though. Don't forget that.
Well, he had 3 games with Dalvin Cook out, where in that span he was like the RB 15, but he had a 140-yard rushing game. I would love for Mike Boone to go off because I'm a Broncos fan and we need a solid running back, but it's probably not going to happen. We're going to see a split between Boone and Gordon until Gordon fumbles. Then Boone will take over the Gordon role. Latavius Murray will take over kind of like that power back role. Or they're all going to get hurt too because the Broncos.
You can't. Okay.
I am salty, but honestly, in fantasy, unless you absolutely have to get involved in what this backfield is right now outside of Melvin Gordon, I really would be very careful about it. don't have
Yeah,
high
I mean,
expectations.
You don't want to fall into the trap of just assuming, because I mean that's the thing. We're waiting. We're not waiting for injuries. Let me take that back. But we're waiting to pounce on opportunity. And it, as far as two like upper echelon running backs, and Javonte Williams and Cordarrelle Patterson, two upper echelon running backs getting hurt. The result of that, as far as the waiver wire, is pretty gross, relatively speaking. As far as running backs, coming up through the fold, because with Boone and Latavius Murray, I mean, they were already running a committee. It was already a split backfield with a much better running back leading the way. So why all of a sudden is Mike Boone going to come in and get for Mike Boone to be fantasy relevant? He's going to have to get a bunch of volume, and he's just not going to get that. So I completely agree. He's probably my top running back waiver wire ad.
He is mine too.
It's not a great week for
not counting Rachaad White though. Rachaad White is still my top.
Rachaad White's there. I get a little bit.
Yeah, I
forget about him because he's on all my teams since the draft. But but Rachaad White would, for sure.
Yeah, he's only rostered in 11.3% of ESPN leagues, so he is out there. Not in a lot of the leagues, the deeper ones that I'm in, but he is out there. Tyler Algier, we kind of talked about him a little bit with waivers too. He's only rostered in 16.9%. So if you need to play these next couple weeks, Algier is a decent one. Check out Huntley as well if you need a depth piece. Josh Reynolds, Nate Guy, he's out there right now. He's available in over 90% of leagues, and he's 7 of 8 for 81 this last week with a tutty. He put a couple of my teams to rest. I was playing against him in a lot of places. So
I have one more running back to look for potentially with this group is a guy that it's not based on injury. It's Raheem Mostert, because he's been getting more of the play in Miami. I think he would be a better, if you're in need of a running back, he's a better long-term potential asset than any of these backups in Atlanta or Denver.
Yep, I do agree with that. Just kind of a low ceiling, I think, for him.
But all these guys.
Couple more wide receivers that we've talked about this season already. We talked about Devin Duvernay in week 1. Guys, you should be picking him up too. He scored over 9 PPR points each week. Only rostered in 19.5% of ESPN leagues. So look at Devin Duvernay. It's a little bit touchdown dependent, but he's getting the looks in the red zone. He's a big play waiting to happen too. And like at this point, there's not a lot separating him from Rashad Bateman on this team, really. So keep Duvernay in mind. And then Jen a couple weeks ago for our In the Scope segment, she highlighted Taysom Hill. He scored touchdowns in 2 of 3 of his active games. So Taysom Hill is kind of tasty as well. I mean, all I'm saying is that we are a Andy Dalton injury away right now from Taysom Hill to being back in that situation we were in 2020, where he could be a quarterback that you can throw in your tight end slot at least for a week or two. So if you're struggling at tight end, which I know like 90% of teams are, and you have an extra roster spot, I don't mind rostering Taysom Hill at this point. I'll just say that.
Yeah, if you've got a deep bench and you've got a spot, then that's a lottery ticket I'm fine having. But I'm not giving up much in the way of depth for him. For Hill, hoping with the really only payoff being another injury to Dalton.
Final one we're going to talk about here, Tyler Conklin, tight end 8. He was, again, 3 for 52 this week, 5 targets, so the volume did come down a little bit, but he's only rostered in 38.7% of ESPN leagues, guys, so that number needs to go higher. As long as he's sub 50%, we're going to continue to mention his name because he should be rostered. He's a top 8 tight end on the season. Quickly, before we get into our In the Scope candidates, though, just want to talk about some drops. These are players I'm comfortable dropping. You guys can stop me if you disagree with me. Julio Jones, wide receiver 99 on the season. He had a decent week 1, but we've played this game with Julio. I don't want to go down this path again. It's going to be injuries, underperformances like we saw here in week 4. I'm done there. Dawson Knox.
Godwin's back.
Dawson Knox, tight end for the Bills. I was excited after he got that contract. I thought maybe that would mean something. It doesn't really look like it has. Maybe if I need a tight end, maybe I hold on one more week because Isaiah McKenzie might not be out there. Like, he might get more looks without McKenzie, without Jameson Crowder. But if you need to move on from Dawson Knox, I'm okay with it.
I told y'all not to draft him in the first place.
Easy. I mean,
Nobody
dude,
listened.
it was Dawson Knox. I don't
Nobody
think anyone was
listened.
excited to draft Dawson
I
Knox.
don't-
He was just kind of that default tight end 8.
Dawson Knox
8-9.
is Robert Tonyan. The dude has to score a touchdown if he's going to be relevant because he's never going to see that kind of consistent volume in the Buffalo offense.
with your tight end 10 through 15 range, that's
Sure.
pretty much always the case.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, with Knox, I don't see it changing just because the Buffalo Bills have targeted tight ends the lowest amount in the league by far. Josh Allen is just not looking towards his tight ends. Just not happening.
Allen Robinson, wide receiver 73 on the season. All I'm going to say is that I said, again, I don't want a victory lap or anything like this, but like I did say after week 1, like if you didn't hit the panic button last year and you don't hit the panic button this year, you're in the same position. And here we are. We're 4 weeks into this thing. Allen Robinson has one kind of usable fantasy game, but still overall shit. So, I mean, you can try to trade him if someone wants to trade for him, but I don't think you're going to. So I'm okay with moving on at this point, guys. Ben Skoranek was used all over the field. It didn't really materialize to a lot, but he was in the backfield, line up at fullback. It was a little weird to see, but I'm just done with A-Rob at this point, guys. He's the 3rd or 4th receiving option on this team. If OBJ does come back later this season, he gets bumped down. We might see Van Jefferson back later this season too, and it just hurts him even more. I'm just done. I
see A-Rob as one of those guys with still has that name value and is just going to be a roster. He's going to be a bench clogger if you don't just cut bait now. He's just going to sit there. You're going to hope it's going to come around. It's not. And if we're talking redraft, especially if it's a little bit shallower of a league, then don't feel weird about dropping Allen Robinson just because his name's Allen Robinson.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we had to go down this path last year. If you didn't, you just clogged your bench all season. So, I'm sorry it didn't work out. If you're following us here at IBT, like we weren't really on him. We tried to stay away from him as much as we could. Traylon Burks, guys, wide receiver 75. He suffered a toe injury here. As much as the young rookie looked promising at times this year, the Tennessee offense is bad. Traylon Burks is banged up. You can't hold him any longer, I don't think. I think you got to cut bait with him. If you want a Tennessee wide receiver, go for Robert Woods, I guess. But I'm just out on Tennessee in general.
It depends a little bit on his. I mean, if he's going to miss multiple games, there's really no. He's one of those guys to me. I don't like if you were to drop him because he's missing multiple games. I don't think anybody in your league is probably going to pick him up. So if you wanted to pick him up later, go for it. If you're in a redraft league that has keepers, then depending on the settings with that, if he's a guy that it's a candidate to keep and get a good value next year, then that might stop me. But we're starting to get towards the point of the season where you're going to have to make some moves, especially if you've got off to a slow start. Where, I mean, we say it all the time, it's just one game, it's early. But, I mean, redraft is unforgiving.
Cutthroat, yeah.
You know what I mean? So sometimes you have to make a decision and move on. So.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, let's bring up our in the scope candidates. And these are the players that after the waivers run, you can go out, spend just a little bit of your fab or no fab at all and just grab them off free agency. Like that's the plan here. And these are guys who haven't popped off quite yet, but we think could in the next couple of weeks. We've hit on a lot so far this year, Nate. You were hot on Josh Reynolds earlier this year, and it really paid off if people went out and got him a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to give the floor to you, my friend. You've been on a hot streak lately. Who is your shot here within the scope heading into week 5, a pivotal week?
All right, guys, don't laugh at me. But it's Hayden Hurst. Joe Mixon has been wildly inefficient. Historically inefficient. Like one of the most inefficient seasons by a running back in NFL history through 4 or 5 games. Cincinnati's offensive line, awful, terrible, worse than I could have ever imagined, and I ranked all of the lines. What Hayden Hurst does, though, is he gives Burrow a quick out. So when the pocket collapses, like it has repeatedly through the first 4 contests this season, Burrow has a quick out in Hayden Hurst, which I think is why they signed him, because they didn't really have that before. Hurst is he snagged a touchdown. That's not going to happen every week. But in these ugly streets that are the tight end market in the NFL right now, you don't have a whole lot of great options at tight end. I wrote about Will Dissly today, and that you should go out and maybe think about getting him. Scott's probably laughing at me right now, even though I can't see him. I don't hate Hayden Hurst. I think there's a role 2 of the next 4 games aren't great. They face New Orleans, who's been fantastic against tight ends. They have Cleveland, who's been fantastic against tight ends. But then they have 2 really solid matchups. Then rest of the season, I mean, really don't face anybody who's been super great against the position, and they need all the offense they can get. They're 1-3, and they were in the AFC champion. They were in the Super Bowl last year. They won the AFC championship game. If you need a tight end, this really isn't a bad option, because otherwise you're looking at guys like Logan Thomas, who, do you really want to mess with more of the Washington offense?
Yeah. I was actually looking at Hayden Hurst, making him my sure things or my in the scope candidate this week too. So I like the call. Quickly before we move on to Scott's here, we have a question here from Chase, new face in the chat. What's up, Chase? Good to see you tonight. Hope you're enjoying your Tuesday evening here. Just trade away Gibson and Hawkinson for Schultz and Melvin Gordon. What do you think?
So I don't love the Schultz for Hawk part that much, but I really like getting off of Gibson before Brian Robinson comes back and is healthy, and getting Melvin Gordon, who could be the RB1 in Denver. We don't know. I mean, we're projecting all these things, but there's a good chance that Melvin Gordon is the guy who gets the majority of the carries in this offense until he fumbles. I
don't hate the trade. All I will say is I think you could have got more for Hawkinson at this point. I just think at the end of the day, Hawkinson is a player that he's going to have these big games a couple times a year. And if you can capitalize on him, sell high, I think you have to do it here. So I don't love it. I'll be honest. I don't love it, but I understand why you did it. I'm okay with Melvin for Gibson. That makes sense. But Schultz is just so sketchy right now. And I love Dalton Schultz too. So that's kind of how I feel. Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. I mean, the timing of this trade after Hawk just put up a 40 burger, you might, but at the same time, I mean, we're not that far removed from the start of the season when Dalton Schultz was coming in as a tight end 5. Now that hasn't transpired yet, but in the long run, this could end up working out for Chase fairly well, I would say, because I totally agree that we've talked a lot about waivers because we have to, Mike Boone, Latavius Murray, but the most likely outcome in Denver is that Melvin Gordon is the primary back for the rest of the season, unless he gets hurt or has the fumbles. But the most likely outcome, if it walks like a horse, it's probably a horse, is that he is and when I say primary back, I just mean the majority carry, majority touch running back. That's not going to be the case for Gibson when Robinson comes back. So I'm fine with this trade because at the same time, Hawkinson did just put up that big game, but that's not the norm for Hawkinson. So I like that trade.
Okay. Honest. All right. Well, Scott likes it a little more than I think I do. But Chase, we appreciate you tuning in tonight, man. Hope you subscribe. Continue to follow us over here at IBT. I think this is our sarcastic question here from Udo. He's asking me how much fab I use on Hayden Hurst.
All of it. Use all of it. Spend all of your fab on Hayden Hurst.
Yeah,
smash play.
Udo's a league mate, so we'll tell him to go ahead and smash all your fab on Hayden Hurst. But realistically, guys, any of these players that we talk about in the scope, you don't really need to spend barely any fab, if any at all. So keep that in mind. Scott, why don't you take us home here with your in the scope?
Okay, so mine is a wide receiver who, he's rostered. I checked. He's rostered in 30% of sleeper leagues, standard 12-team, 1 QB leagues. So it's not down at the 0% range, but that's Sky Moore, Kansas City wide receiver, who is in what I would call initial stages of kind of that post-hype for a rookie, where a lot of people were very hyped and it just didn't happen right away, to the point where in week 3 he fumbled on a punt and never saw a target. So, he's fallen out of the good graces of a lot of people, but he did have his highest snap share and he had 4 targets in the most recent game, whereas McCole Hardman had 1 target. So this is the kind of time when I think his usage is starting to uptick, and Kansas City has a great matchup for wide receivers in Las Vegas coming up this week, but then they don't have another good matchup until their week 8 bye. So this is not a pick up Sky Moore and play him by any means. This is more of a stash candidate that I think is virtually free, being only 30% of leagues. After their week 8 bye, they have 4 straight matchups where currently are bottom half of the league as far as most fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So 4 very good matchups for Kansas City coming out of the bye. I think Sky Moore is going to be one of those, a lot of rookie wide receivers. If they become fantasy relevant their rookie years, it's in the second half of the season. And I think that's what we're going to see with Sky Moore. So if you have a spot to stash someone, that is a guy I'm stashing.
Love it, Scott. Yeah, I think Sky Moore is interesting here moving forward. He's shown a little bit of promise. Got to get those hands under him on those punt returns, though.
Yeah.
He gets a little frisky out there. I'll go ahead and round us out here, though, on In the Scope with my In the Scope candidate here. And it's going to be the rookie Jameson Williams. And here's what you need to know about Jameson Williams and rostering him. I'm only doing this, guys, if I have an IR slot in my team. Like, I'm not going out and picking him up right now if I don't have an IR slot, but most teams do since COVID happened. A lot of people are using IRs more and more frequently in fantasy. So if you are taking an eye out on Jameson Williams, Jared Goff now this season, I can't believe I'm saying this, but he leads the league in touchdown passes, tied with Patrick Mahomes with 12. He is top 3 in yards. He has the longest pass in the league at 81 yards, and he's the fantasy QB5. And none of this is going to change because his defense is atrocious right now. So he's going to get the volume. And Williams is a guy who comes in here almost averaging 20 yards per catch in college. He went over for 1,500 yards, 5 touchdowns, and he ran a 4.3, which is 99 percentile, guys. So I am very interested in Jameson Williams. He could be a league-winning type of player. You're going to have to stash him for another 3 or 4 weeks here. He could practice as early as this week, though, so keep that in mind. Jameson Williams, though, I think is an interesting stash here. If you need him, pick him up, keep him on the IR for a couple weeks, and maybe, just maybe in a couple weeks, you have a league winner on your hand. That's my take here on Jameson Williams, though, guys. I think he's interesting. You're muted, Nate.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to be respectful here. I love this call so much because Jameson Williams he might be the best receiver in this class, but because of the injury, his stock fell in the draft. But in this offense, I think he's the type of receiver that Jared Goff is going to love. And it sounds like he will practice this week. We could see him in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Could we get a league-winning rookie wide receiver from the Detroit Lions 2 years in a row? A guy who just goes off in the playoffs. Well, I think we could.
We know Amon-Ra is having trouble staying healthy right now. He's banged up. DJ Chark has been no stranger to the injury report as well throughout his career. So Swift's banged up. Like, there's opportunity to be had here. I mean, hell, dude, Josh Reynolds just took me to the cleaners a couple of times this week. Yeah. So, Jameson Williams, that's our thoughts on him. Scott, any final thoughts on Jay Willie there?
I totally agree. I love Jameson Williams. I mean, he's a guy for me personally. If I had an IR slot, he's been in that slot for a while. If you don't have an IR slot, you're probably a little bit of cat and mouse because there's going to be somebody in your league who's thinking the same thing as you and like, ooh, when am I going to pull the trigger on this Jameson Williams?
Put him on the watch list then. Yeah, put him on the watch list, flag him, whatever you guys do in your platforms. Just one more question here from Udo for In the Scope. Thoughts on Gus Edwards as an In the Scope candidate? Same type of thing. Like, if you have an IR slot, if you're needy at running back, you can go after Gus Edwards. I'm just not rushing back. Like, I'm not rushing to go get him or anything. I think JK is probably going to have a lot of this backfield, and it's going to be a lot of Lamar. So, like, I'm not overly intrigued, but at the same time, Mike Davis wasn't doing it. Kenyon Drake wasn't doing it. So there is somewhat of a role here. Justice Hill banged up. Like, I don't hate it, Udo. If you need to go out and you need to grab someone and put them in that IR slot you can stash for a couple weeks, I don't hate it at all.
Yeah, I think in the spirit of this segment In the Scope, I think the running back landscape it's a wasteland. Poor
the
waiver wire. So a guy like this would be, because I think for the Ravens, their ideal setup is Dobbins, being spelled by Gus Edwards. I think that's the way they want it. They haven't been able to put it together because of injury, but I think that's the way they want it, and I think he could have some value.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and round this puppy out here with one of my favorite segments that we just haven't done in a while because there's been so much fantasy to talk, but we're going to bring a little feel-good lifestyle back to the show with weekly advice.
Weekly
So I think something that isn't really talked about enough when with us playing fantasy, with us gambling on sports, is the downside to it and like the tilt that can come with it. This week, I felt that for the first time this season. Was just a couple legs off on a couple really awesome parlays again. Like I said earlier, fantasy football teams, I lost 3 of my favorite leagues, all by like less than a point. So I was super disappointing about that. And, I really just had to step back and think like, what's important here? There are people down in Florida who lost their homes and so much bad stuff going on in the world. So like this, I just wanted to bring this segment up and talk about like tips that we can provide people for taking a step back and like avoiding a bad fantasy week turning into a bad real life week, because I kind of felt that. Like I felt irritated yesterday. I felt like I wasn't very nice to people. And I don't want to be that way. So how do we do that? How do we avoid burnout? How do we keep the good vibes rolling even when the fantasy vibes are not so good right now? Nate, I want to start with you, my friend.
It's a game based on a game. If you're putting more money than you can afford to lose on the line in these contests and things and it's stressing you out, you should probably call that 1-800-GAMBLING number that we all laugh at after a gambling ad. But it's real. If you're finding that this is constantly affecting your mood in the real world, you might want to consider maybe taking a step back and not doing it. I have fun with it, and if I lose in all of my 26 leagues and I don't win a single DFS slate and all of my bets miss, I still have an amazing wife and an awesome kid that I get to just kind of hang with. Be mindful of your involvement in fantasy sports and fantasy gambling. I know a lot of people who have gotten really sucked into almost addiction level with it, or are at addiction level with it, and it does affect their life like that. If you're at that point, you need to talk to someone about maybe scaling back your involvement and finding some other hobby.
All right, Nate. So Nate's saying just be mindful here. Like if it does get to a serious point, keep that in mind. Scott, do you have another tip for us here?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Nate. If it gets that bad, then you might have to take another look. But I think there's still just an amount of stress that I allow in that I think is probably avoidable. It doesn't like ruin my day or my week, but it can sour my mood. And this year, I mean, I've actually posted about it on Twitter a few times. I hope I haven't seemed too whiny, but I mean, this year in particular, it's just been, and it coincides with me like really, really fully stepping into this analysis and research, and to have that, a result of that being like by far the worst start of my fantasy football career, like not even close, like nowhere near a 500 record across my leagues, nowhere near. But I would say, as far as something that you can do that I need to be better at, is I feel like I get the most, because I've been very vocal about this. I'm a recovering addict, and there's a place my mind goes with obsession around things where it just starts to supersede everything else, everything around me. And I can get into that mode, sitting there with my phone or sitting there with the games, paying attention to every 10th of a point, every yard that every single one of my teams is scoring. The problem is it's kind of a double-edged sword, because I love that aspect of it. I love sitting there and watching fantasy points accumulate. But I do have evidence in front of me, the days where I am forced to just go do other things and just kind of check on my scores here and there. Even if I lose, it doesn't hit me as much, because I haven't been as invested into it just 100% of the day. So I would say, if you're struggling with that sort of thing, and you're like me, and you're just a obsessed point watcher, try and walk that back a little bit. I'm not very good at it. I have to work on it. But it does help, I think, because those points are what happens in the games is going to happen in the games, whether your attention to every 10th of a point or not. Yeah.
Go for a walk at halftime, try to get your mind off it a little bit, because it is stressful. And Scott, my tip, my advice here kind of echoes yours in a way, but like one thing that I've been doing is like, I got really frustrated on Sunday. I did. So I walked out of the living room where I had my 2 TVs going. Also my NASCAR bet, my guy's leading the whole race, of course, doesn't win. Last lap gets passed. So, it is what happens. But, so I was stressed out. I was peeved off. I walked into the kitchen though. I pulled up Red Zone on my phone. I was streaming it. and I just started cooking. And man, did it feel good. Like, did it feel good to just take my frustration out on some potatoes and get a roast going? And I think that's like my advice is just like find, maybe it's not cooking, maybe it's not getting something ready for dinner, maybe that stresses you out. Some people it does. For me, it's a calming thing, and I enjoy doing it. So find something else that you enjoy doing that you can maybe also do while you're still consuming the games, but maybe brings a little bit of fun. Katie, my girlfriend, she'll knit sometimes as we watch the game. And I find that that kind of helps her not look at her phone so much, where my bet's at, where my team's at, that type of stuff. So just find like another alternative that you can maybe do as you watch the game. Also, I think something that we're all big proponents here, guys, is like, man, I've been listening to a lot of music this week, and it's really helped chill me out. Like find those music, whether it's chill, sad music if you just lost, whether you need to celebrate a victory with some pump up music, whatever it is, like lean on those things. Lean on those like commodities in life, whether it's cooking, music, comedy, taking a walk with your wife, your partner, whatever it is. But yeah, that's kind of just, I appreciate your guys' insight, but I think it's important that we talk about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, always. I mean, we're nothing if we're not human.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people invest a lot of time in this, and when things don't go your way, it's, it's not uncommon to react maybe in a way you don't want to. So, just for me, like imposter syndrome starts setting in too. It's like, well, if I can't even win in my home league, who wants to take advice from me? You know what I mean? That kind of stuff, where it's just like they're kind of separate in a way. You know what I mean? Like I'm weird with my own teams. Like the advice I give and in articles and on this pod, I don't necessarily always follow that when it comes to my teams.
See, I'm too like, if I advise something, I do it 100% of the time. Like I've gotten much better at that. Like I said, I was picking up Jared Goff, and I'm going to pick up Jared Goff. Like I'm not like, I started Marcus Mariota this week, multiple places over Russell Wilson, and I feel like shit. I almost felt like more like shit because I advised other people to do it, So it was like a double-edged sword, and like I literally like had an issue going to sleep Sunday night because I was so, just rattled. And then Monday night, I have the 49ers defense. I have George Kittle. I need about like 29 points between the two of them. I'm like, oh, this is gonna For me, it was the second straight Monday night where I won 3 matchups on Monday night. Okay,
that was very nice against our friend Toronto Dave, who prematurely celebrated against me.
Very nice.
I had the Evans Bree stack that went berserk. I came back and won. Anyway,
well, I'm glad to hear you did, because I came about a 1 point short, less than a point short. And if my boy Fred Warner, the whole gang, they did everything they could, but Fred dropped that like almost another pick six there at the end. They almost sacked Stafford on that last drive. So there's so much that could have gone my way. Kittle steps out of the end zone. Deontay steps out. But at the end of the day, it was my own fault. I started Marcus Mariota. I told other people too. I thought he was a safer play than Russell Wilson. He wasn't. So bottom line here, guys, if it gets to a point where it is affecting your life very bad, talk to someone, take a step back from what you're doing. If you're just at the point where maybe you're like Scott and I and Nate, and you're a little frustrated with your teams right now, or the bets aren't hitting, let's remember
you're only slightly degenerate.
Yeah. If you're slightly degenerate like us, remember to have fun. This is a game, and find those other things that you love doing as well, because there's so much more in life than fantasy football, and we're going to bring that to you. That's what we do here in Between Media. We appreciate Albert, Brad, everyone, Udo, everyone in the chat who's been there tonight, tuning in with us. We're going to continue to be here throughout the season. Nate and I will be back on Friday. Good luck on waivers tonight. And until then, guys, keep it in between, and we'll see you soon, friends. Thank you so much. Your destination for both some feel-good lifestyle advice and some fantasy football advice.